Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. I'm Ed Henry, and again for Tucker. The White House keeps saying there's only one president at a time. But the question tonight is, who is that president? Since world leaders from Moscow to London are now saying for the first time they're already looking past President Obama. So where is that one president, in Hawaii or Florida? After all, it certainly seems like American diplomacy is being conducted, at least in part, from Palm Beach, where a short time ago, President-elect Donald Trump used Twitter to congratulate Vladimir Putin for dismissing those U.S. sanctions imposed by Mr. Obama. The Russian president said he's not really going to bother to respond until he sees how Mr. Trump handles all of this, leading the president-elect to tweet, "Great move on delay by V. Putin. I always knew he was very smart." To be fair and balanced, we will press two key Trump allies on whether it's such a good idea to continue to appear so cozy with a leader in Russia who rules with an iron fist. But we'll also explore Mr. Obama's fading power. Today, he was even dissed by the British, with whom we are said to have a special relationship diplomatically. Now, apparently, not so special. British Prime Minister Theresa May unexpectedly scolded Secretary of State John Kerry, saying it was inappropriate to spend so much time attacking Israel earlier this week. That was widely seen as a sign that even the British are done with the Obama years and waiting for the Trump administration to get going. So some major developments to chew over, though tonight we'll also get you ready for New Year's Eve. Several live reports. We'll make time for some other intriguing stories. Maybe it's not surprising that yet another singer tonight is saying she will not perform at Donald Trump's inauguration. But can you believe that she went so far as to say it's because she could never, quote, throw roses to Hitler? Oh, and did I mention that this flamethrower is not a Hollywood liberal? She's a performer for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Wow. And we'll also check in on Lindsay Lohan's latest exploits, because why not? Tucker has given me the keys to this place for just one more night. So let's have some fun. But first, the very serious stakes tonight for American foreign policy. Let's get right to the former director of the CIA, James Woolsey, who's also a senior Trump advisor. From Israel to Russia, Mr. Director, it really looks like on his way out the door, President Obama is blindsiding the president-elect.
Well, I think President Obama is not taking any particularly effective action against anyone. He's barely getting by. His propensity for dealing with what his White House calls the narrative, starting with the story you want and working backward to the facts, and then if the facts don't mesh, you kind of say whoops and sort of fiddle around with the facts. He has gotten himself, I think, into a situation where he's trying to control everything, President Obama is, but failing badly. He, for example, seems to want to be the investigator, prosecutor, judge, and jury for everything having to do with this hacking. But he's not got the credibility, I don't think, to carry it off. People see that he thinks the hacking is important and serious, and it's one of the things that I think is degrading a lot of people's assessment of the hacking.
Mr. Director, earlier this morning on Fox and Friends, I asked Rudy Giuliani about all of this, and he also ripped into the president. Listen to this.
Barack Obama's made these decisions in the last 3 weeks on Israel, on Russia, and elsewhere. Is he trying to box in the president-elect? What's he trying to do?
Of course. Why didn't the 18 months of hacking? Why didn't he do something about it 10 months ago? It never would have happened. After all that, and letting this go for 18 months, 2 weeks before he goes out of office, he does a bunch of these sanctions just to create a problem for Russia. I've never seen a president try to create more problems for a future president.
So how, I think the big question is, how does President-elect Trump pick up the pieces on this and try to repair this key relationship with Russia?
I don't know that he's got a lot of repairing to do. I think people have exaggerated the notion that by saying more or less friendly things on several occasions in response to what Putin has said, that he's somehow embracing the Russians or giving in to them. I don't think Trump has really done that. I've negotiated on 4 major treaties with the then Soviet Union. 3 of them, they were very hard to get along with. We never really got anywhere. There was table pounding, etc. On the 4th one, we negotiated a very substantial treaty in 5 languages covering all the nations of Europe's military forces. and the Russians were really very easy to get along with. They wanted to work on the problem. So, you know, there are Russians and then there are Russians. And if you can work with them on something, okay, give it a try. Sure. If not, then I think Teddy Roosevelt had it right. Speak softly, but carry a big stick.
Right, but in this case, you have a situation where the president of Russia, as you know, has led with an iron fist. He's hardly been small d Democrat. And the intelligence agencies, as you know better than anyone, are suggesting that they were interfering in the American election process. And so I wonder, why is Donald Trump out there saying he's a very smart man?
Well, that's still, you know, not some kind of giving in. That's a light compliment, I would say. And one sometimes does that in diplomacy. But he didn't give anything up by saying that. He didn't give anything away. And I think that it's important that Obama really has been so badly weakened by the way he has handled all this, that he's increasingly irrelevant. People really don't care that much. These sanctions are a nothing burger. Yeah. They involve 35 Russian intelligence officers and their families having to move back to Russia, and probably about another 35 moving to the United States. And we closed down a couple of two summer houses that the Russian embassy. You know, so what?
Right, but moving forward then, that's an interesting assessment, but moving forward, are you saying that complimenting Putin on Twitter is not a big deal and maybe opens the door to working with him on the ceasefire in Syria? Is that the Trump view, that a compliment here or there will open the door to diplomacy?
I'm just stating my own views, and I think it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes Putin is being very clever in the way he's handling this. He's got this steered over in a direction such that he's making the issue of sanctions look tiny by comparison. Basically, he's using the sanctions now as an occasion to invite American children to the Kremlin for a New Year's Eve party.
Yeah.
I mean, he's basically kind of being brushed aside.
But last question, I understand your broader point that each situation has a different push on diplomacy. But when you think back to Reagan and why Republicans thought he was good in terms of dealing with the Soviets, was that he was tough with Gorbachev,
yep.
Not that he was out there sucking up to him.
He was tough, but he was also very friendly. He was very much in the world of wanting to get along with the Russians, but being tough where he had to be tough. He had, I think, exactly the right balance. But I don't see that anything has happened so far that would say Trump can't strike that kind of a balance, too.
Okay, that'll be the last word. Director Woolsey, we appreciate you coming in. Happy New Year.
Good to be with you.
Today, Vladimir Putin, as the director just noted, tried to tweak President Obama again by inviting some children of U.S. diplomats to come over for a New Year's Eve party at the Kremlin. Mr. Obama, meanwhile, is spending his holiday, as is his custom, in Hawaii. And that's where we find Fox News White House correspondent Kevin Corke live in Honolulu. Good to see you, Kevin.
Hey, good to talk to you, Ed, once again. And what a difference a day makes, right? Yesterday was the Kremlin and the White House going back and forth, sparring over accusations that the Russians tried to influence the U.S. election by using cyber attacks. Well, that was then, and this is now. And what I mean by that is simply this. Vladimir Putin doing something a bit unexpected today, and that's playing a bit of a game of wait and see. Now, we do have pictures from around the country. We're talking coast to coast, a similar scene, Ed, playing out. And we're talking about those Russian operatives, nearly 36 of them ordered out of the U.S. in the next 72 hours. Well, they were trying to leave their respective places of residence and business. Of course, all this in retaliation for what the White House called Russian cyber intrusion during the run-up to the election. But even as the administration closed a facility in New York and another one in Maryland, Russian President Vladimir Putin fired off what could be best described as his own "when they go low, we go high" statement. Let me show this to you and to the folks at home. Although we have the right to retaliate, we will not resort to irresponsible kitchen diplomacy, but will plan our further steps to restore Russian-U.S. relations based on the policies of the Trump administration. Of course, the Kremlin's decision, Ed, comes a day after the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security released a joint report detailing how the federal investigators are linking the Russians to the alleged hacking of the DNC. But critics still wonder and worry, frankly, if the diplomatic fallout won't have a major ramification on America's standing in the world.
The world looks at our country to have peaceful and a productive and a smooth transfer of power. This type of nonsense is what I would expect from a tin pot dictatorship that just became a democracy and can't make the democratic system work. America demands better.
Now, just how the Trump administration responds to the sanctions and obviously this back and forth remains to be seen. But I can tell you this, Ed, White House officials even now are warning the Trump administration not to stray too far from convention.
If the next administration wants to lift sanctions against senior Russian intelligence units to make it easier for them to interfere in our elections, you can go ahead and do that. We just don't think that makes much sense.
But even tonight, my friend, as I'm sure you well know, the PR battle continues. Vladimir Putin in a statement saying, listen, it's regrettable the way the Obama administration has ended. Nevertheless, we have extended New Year greetings to both the Obama and Trump families. Score one for diplomacy in that respect for Vladimir Putin. We'll see if it makes a difference into the new year. Back to you, my friend.
Spreading the greeting, indeed. Kevin Core, thank you. And while foreign leaders may be looking past President Obama, we learned today he's now scrambling to try and salvage his legacy on the home front. Next week, the president will make a rare visit to Capitol Hill to huddle with top Democrats to come up with a plan to save Obamacare. Who better to check in on this than our friend, Democratic strategist Jessica Tarlow. Good to see you.
And good to see you.
Do you think the president wishes he had done this kind of work a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago? Instead, he fought every even minor tweak to Obamacare, thinking Hillary Clinton was going to win and all was going to be well.
Yes, I think it was a mistake on President Obama's fault to not recognize that there were little tweaks that could be made to make Obamacare better for the American public. I mean, something that
Hillary Clinton talked about in the campaign.
Right, absolutely. She had to. Remember when she said you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but there are things we can do here. I mean, one thing I never understood why they fought so hard was just purchasing insurance across state lines.
Yeah.
You know,
Simple
allowing
steps that
more
Republicans
competition,
are pushing.
right? So that Democrats could look like we're willing to compromise a little bit. But I think that he knew going out of this that this was his signature legacy item, and he wanted it the way that he wanted it.
So how do Democrats read it now? Because you remember in the first interviews he did, Donald Trump as president-elect with our own sister publication, the Wall Street Journal, as well as 60 Minutes, he suggested he was going to keep parts of Obamacare.
Absolutely.
So, but then he sort of, when conservatives pushed back on that, suggested, well, we're still going to repeal it. Keep some things.
Oh, you mean when he became a conservative, when that transfer happened somewhere in the middle of the campaign?
Well, that's your characterization, so walk me through it. What are Democrats thinking about how much of Obamacare can survive?
Well, I think that we know keeping kids young adults on their insurance until 26 has to stay. That's popular on both sides. And also the pre-existing conditions clause. But what's difficult there is that means then that you need the mandate. And that's something that Republicans hate.
You have some of the goodies, so how do you pay for it?
Exactly.
Republicans have another challenge, to be fair here, which is Bloomberg had a piece on this, which is after several years of talking about repealing Obamacare, it looks like, quote, they haven't come to a consensus in the House and the Senate about the possible replacement plans. They don't know, point B. That was from Douglas Holtz-Aiken, a Republican economist, telling that to Bloomberg. So are Democrats thinking strategically, and is that part of what President Obama is going to do behind closed doors next week, if you could give us a sense that Republicans still don't have a plan B?
Absolutely, and that Democrats should hammer that to say, okay, they're going to come in here, over 20 million people have gotten insurance. What are you going to do for those people? Because Donald Trump made it clear. It was one of my favorite things that he actually said over the course of the last...
Wait a second, that's news.
Yeah, there are like 3 other things probably, but I'll have to think of them. When he said, we're not going to kick people off insurance, right? We can't have people dying in the streets, as it were. And then I think you had that congressman who said, you don't necessarily need to go to the ER with a broken arm, like my kid broke his arm and we just waited it out. That can't happen. And that's not a policy.
Politically, it's probably unsustainable.
It's a big mistake. And also, if you look at where the polls are right now on this, the Kaiser Family Foundation, their health care poll, shows it's basically split approval at this point. And in the last few months, we've seen 25% more Republicans want the law to stay, but to be tweaked rather than repealed.
Real quick, I want to play this bite. President Obama, President-elect Trump, just days after the election, this is how it went.
My number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. Because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other.
It started out almost like a bromance.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to, you know, we spent so much time.
It was like the Twilight Zone day.
But
I remember
now,
thinking, what is happening?
But now it appears like the Obama White House is throwing stink bombs out there and saying, look what we can do on Mideast peace, Russia.
Yeah.
Let's just make it as difficult as possible.
I think the Mideast piece part here is the most difficult one. I mean, doing that with 22 days out. I actually think it's handing Trump a pretty good deck that now he has another best friend in Netanyahu. So he has Putin and Netanyahu. One of those I like better than the other. But I think that's a good thing for him. But,
and low expectations, because nobody thinks
the bar
Mideast
has
peace.
never been lower for anyone than Donald Trump, right? I mean, we talked about this going into the debates. As long as he doesn't really blow it, people are going to think that he won, and some did. Depends what poll you were looking at.
He kept exceeding those expectations.
He did, and he ended up winning the election. So you have it there. But with the bromance thing, it was interesting because I think it's important, obviously, for President Obama to make this a smooth transition. You know, country above party and all that jazz. But at the same time, he was still sitting there staring at a guy who was one of the leading birthers, right? Who said that he founded ISIS, and those are things that are hard to get over.
Come back apart.
Well, I think also in Donald Trump, he doesn't stick to something for that long himself. If something upsets him, he's going to tweet about it.
Jessica Tarlov, we appreciate your
Thanks,
insights.
Happy New Year. Nice seeing you in the 7 p.m. slot.
All right, good. Appreciate it. Let's head down to Palm Beach, Florida now, where we find our man at Mar-a-Lago, Peter Doocy, live outside what you might call tonight the Southern White House. Good to see you, Peter.
Yeah, it is the Southern White House. Good to see you too, Ed. And 3 weeks from tonight, Donald Trump will become the most powerful man in the world. But tonight, he is also a media critic, tweeting about the recent coverage today and last night of his response to the Obama administration punishing Russia. He wrote this: "Russians are playing CNN and NBC News for such fools. Funny to watch. They don't have a clue. Fox News totally gets it." That post about the Russians playing American reporters was the second thing Mr. Trump tweeted about Russia. Both of them seemed favorable enough, and it was just one day after he announced he would listen to high-ranking intelligence officials who have expressed tremendous confidence that Russia was responsible for interference with the American election. Mr. Trump today had 10 meetings, and there seemed to be as big a focus on finding the next agriculture secretary as any other day during the transition. That is one of the 4 remaining cabinet-level positions unfilled at the end of the year. Susan Combs, a former Texas ag commissioner, was here. So was Henry Bonilla, a former Texas congressman. Howard Lorber, president of the Vector Group, which is a real estate and tobacco company. And then Al Hubbard, a one-time economic advisor in the George W. Bush White House, all part of the official schedule. The highest profile guest today, though, at Mar-a-Lago was the world-famous actor and model Fabio. That's who Mr. Trump was hanging out with at the end of the day. Tomorrow night, though, he's going to have 800 guests over for a glitzy New Year's Eve party in the Grand Ballroom. We saw them setting up for it last night. It looks like it is going to be quite a spectacle. And then it's going to be up to Trump Tower, which he's going to call home for just the next 2 Fridays.
Peter Doocy, he totally gets it as well. Peter, Happy New Year. And now it's time for Twitter Storm, our nightly forecast of social media's most powerful weather patterns. You remember Lindsay Lohan from her hit movie Mean Girls and, well, other stuff.
Homeschooled. That's really interesting.
Thanks.
You're like really pretty.
Thank you.
So you agree? What? You think you're really pretty?
Well, now Lohan said she's like totally eager to make a sequel to the movie. But bro, she's forgetting one important fact. There already is a Mean Girls 2. Well, that has people on Twitter talking. Ron Globe tweeted, "Hello, Mean Girls 2 came out in 2011. I mean, I'm with Lindsay on this one, really. Who knew?" Twitter user Stefano had another perspective. He said, "Mean Girls 2 was already made and it was a disgrace. We can sweep that one under the rug and replace it for this one." Fair enough. Life of a Blonde added a little spice. "I love the fact that Lindsay Lohan doesn't even consider Mean Girls 2 as the real Mean Girls 2. And Girl Meets Blu-ray said, "Mean Girls 2 could be awesome, actually. Though Blu-ray left us hanging, why would it be so awesome? We may simply never know." Others on Twitter were quick to point out that maybe too much time has passed since the original Mean Girls. At Fiza76 tweeted, "Who's she going to play, the teen's grandmother?" And Deplorable Jane was even harsher, saying she is not aging well. If she waits any longer, she'll have to do a Mean Old Ladies. Wow, look at that. This started as Twitter Storm and morphed into mean tweets. Take that, Tucker. Anyway, we're up on this stuff. Not just that politics stuff. Mean Girls 2 is not even the only sequel people are talking about. The website Radar Online says the original Sex and the City cast is set to make a 3rd movie. Wait, has anyone checked if there's already a Sex and the City 3? Maybe that could be Monday's Twitter storm. Meanwhile, President Obama, is he boxing in Donald Trump with his last-minute moves? We'll take a look at the evidence coming up. Also, terror scares have forced police to step up security at New Year's Eve celebrations all around the country. We'll take you live to Times Square to see what's being done. Coming up in question as we look forward becomes, are these moves boxing in President-elect Donald Trump? Time now for our political panel with John McCormick, senior writer at the Weekly Standard, and Jillian Turner, former National Security Advisor. Let's start here with Jillian. You worked inside the National Security Council at the White House. And Theresa May, I mentioned this at the top, British Prime Minister, put out this statement saying today, we do not believe that it is appropriate to attack the composition of the democratically elected government of an ally. She was obviously referring to the fact that Secretary of State John Kerry and the Obama administration has spent so much time in the last week attacking Israel. What do you make of an ally like Britain coming out and calling out the Obama White House?
But here, what's so funny about that quote is you could also read it not knowing the context and think she was talking about Russia and the United States. Their alleged interference in our American elections. So that was an interesting point there. Not knowing the context of that tweet myself, when you just said it, that was the first place my mind went. But I mean, look, obviously relations between the United States and our adversaries around the world are strained. With many of our allies, too, like our Western European allies, are not in as great shape as they've been in the past. You know, the EU is undergoing its own identity crisis. But I think on the issue of if these sanctions sort of are going to cramp Donald Trump's ability to get done what he wants to vis-a-vis Russia, you can make that argument. But I was thinking about this earlier today, and in a certain sense, it's actually going to be helpful for Donald Trump because I think there's been such a backlash against the way the administration has handled this that it's almost going to free Donald Trump up to engage even more closely with Russia.
Interesting.
You follow that logic?
Sure. I want to bring John in, though, because, John, I pressed this with Director James Woolsey, the former director of the CIA, and he was having none of the idea that maybe it looks bad for Donald Trump to be cozying up so much on Twitter and elsewhere with Vladimir Putin. But there are Republicans like Adam Kinzinger, who was on Fox earlier today, expressing real concern within the Republican Party that maybe the president-elect is too close to Russia.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of Republicans who are concerned and really want President-elect Trump to remember that, you know, he's going to be elected, he's going to be made, inaugurated the leader of the free world, and that, you know, this issue with Russia, it's not just about a petty squabble about how Hillary Clinton lost the election. I mean, Russia, over the past few years, I mean, they've invaded Ukraine, journalists have been murdered in Russia, and I think that President Trump really needs to step back and first look at the evidence in terms of this hack and determine for himself whether or not the extent to which Russia was involved, as they are alleged, and to evaluate on behalf of U.S. interests what exactly the proper response should be, rather than tweeting about how smart Vladimir Putin is.
Jillian, you worked in both the Bush and Obama administrations, the National Security Council. Transitions can be difficult, but this one started out friendly, and now it's become pretty intense. I've never seen a situation where you have almost dueling foreign policies.
Yeah, oh, completely. And it's certainly very different from the Bush to Obama transition, which, despite the major policy differences between the two administrations, remained friendly, remained cordial, remained very tightly knit. The transition teams were working together for like 6 months before the end of the Bush administration. Just to enhance this Russia point, the beautiful thing about a transition in this country is that the new president, whoever he or she is, always gets to start with a clean slate. So I think Donald Trump should be commended for having kind of optimism about Russia. He wants to make the bilateral relationship stronger, but my worry, I hope he succeeds, but my worry and my concern is that once he's been in office for a very short amount of time, he's going to learn very quickly that dealing with Vladimir Putin as a counterpart, a foreign head of state, is very different than dealing with him as some guy on the news.
John, real quick, I want to get to another part of this transition. I mentioned there was a singer on the Mormon Tabernacle Choir who says, quote, "I only know I could never throw roses to Hitler, and I certainly could never sing for him." She was talking about how she will not go to the inaugural. What happened to civility for whether it's a Democrat or a Republican being inaugurated?
Oh, well, that's definitely some over-the-top language, I think. Maybe people have a newfound respect for conscientious objectors. You know, the Obama administration wasn't too friendly to them, whether it was Little Sisters of the Poor. Maybe President-elect Trump and Vice President elect Pence can show some sort of magnanimity towards those who don't respect them and to kind of brush it off.
Yeah, and move on. Happy New Year, and maybe start fresh. Yeah. John, Jillian, we appreciate you coming in.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
We mentioned it looked like a brewing bromance. They were practically calling each other Barry and Donald. So what happened to that smooth transition between Mr. Obama and Mr. Trump? An influential congressman, a key ally to the president-elect, will join us to talk about that. But first, Alexa, can you solve a murder? Investigators are calling on Amazon to release information on one of their Amazon Echoes that may have witnessed a murder. Kimberly Guilfoyle is here with that story next. One of this year's hottest Christmas gifts may help solve a murder. A warrant has been issued in a major murder case in Arkansas for an Amazon Echo. The device is only activated after a user says the activation word, Alexa. Then it will read you the weather or let you buy something, of course, on Amazon. But it can also record snippets of conversation in that room that are then sent to the Amazon cloud. So investigators in Bentonville want information from an Echo belonging to James Andrew Bates, who's accused of strangling a man in a hot tub. Amazon has twice denied that request. Here now is Kimberly Guilfoyle, a former prosecutor, co-host of The Five, of course. We've got a hot tub, we've got an Amazon device, and a whole lot of questions, Kimberly, about privacy.
Well, I'm an expert on Amazon devices named Alexa and hot tubs, actually.
Yes,
I'm a big aficionado of hot tubs, and I own an Alexa. In fact, I got one as a gift from my son, Ronan, and he loves it. He swears by it. I think it's fantastic. It's great technology, but with great technology and recording, it becomes
great responsibility.
Fraught with privacy implications and issues, and you see it here. And as a former prosecutor, sure, we want to get any kind of evidence that we can, and social media has been a big tool in terms of forensics for people to be able to get information from text messages, cell phones, email, Facebook's accounts, and now the little mini robot, the computer in your home that actually can record conversations or what's going on. It's interesting because Amazon is an issue of privacy. They don't want people to stop buying these and feel that they're going to be compromised, so they're saying we won't do it.
Yeah, because on one hand, we've seen this with Apple as well, and iPhones.
Yes,
and
remember San Bernardino.
Right, and terrorists texting each other, go here, do that, and you obviously want to get that information. But when someone buys an Amazon Echo to, you want to say, play this dance track, play this music,
what's the weather? Tell
you're
me a
not
joke.
expecting that they're eavesdropping on you. Hopefully people are not committing murders and getting caught with it, but you don't expect that they're recording you all the time. So how do you think that you walk that line?
Yeah, that's why this is so fascinating. So you do have to be careful. Like you said, you really do, because you have to make sure that Alexa isn't hearing or recording anything that you might not want her to. But imagine, this is going up to an Amazon iCloud. So you're really not sure, in fact, what information she could have. But they say they can store like an hour's worth of information, etc. So there could be something relevant here. Well, listen, if one of my loved ones was murdered, God forbid something happened to them, and I thought a device like this would have information that would be probative.
Could crack the case.
Absolutely, you would want to get a hold of it. So then you're going to have to go before a judge and make those arguments. And it's really a case where the law has not caught up in good measure with technology.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're seeing here. And they're coming to over and over again to the same issue where they are hitting one another in the divide. And so now the courts are going to have to make some rulings, establish some precedents in this area, because it keeps coming up over and over again. And like you said, so important with respect to the terrorist investigations, also preventing acts from occurring too. You want to make sure and not just talk about it and investigate it after. You want to preempt it.
This weekend, happier talk, not about a murder case, but you and Bowling get together. Eric
We're
Bowling.
going to kill it on New Year's Eve.
So Fox has you. You're the A team. You guys did it together last year as well.
And it went
what
really
can we
well.
expect? Because everybody wants to know what's going to happen in Times Square.
Yeah, we're pretty excited because last year we had our little safe space. We were up on top of the Knickerbocker. Now we're going to get down and dirty. We're going to be in Times Square with everybody, with the people. We're taking it to the people. So anything can happen. I've done 8 New Year's Eve shows for Fox News Channel. I know, the gift that keeps on giving. Just ask Kimberly. She'll do it. And now I'm excited because we're going to be right there.
So you're on a riser with the people?
Well, we're going to go down into the crowd, actually. And so that's going to be fantastic.
So this is a mosh pit.
Yeah. But that's where the energy is. You have people who have really changed all their life plans, saved up everything to be in Times Square, the bucket list, to be there when the ball drops in New York City in Times Square. So I'm excited. And we have an incredible team with us, Jesse and Kennedy, and Tyrus is with us. And so,
We won't miss it. Happy New Year. We're looking forward to all your great coverage.
Thank you.
And everyone at home, don't forget to watch Kimberly and Eric Bowling on New Year's Eve. Fox's All-American New Year from Times Square starts tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. And tonight, Kimberly is doing double duty. She's appearing on O'Reilly after this and hosting Hannity. Tune into Fox News Channel throughout primetime tonight. And we have your one-stop shop for all New Year's news. Want the weather? We got it. Want to know what's being done to keep millions of people safe, which is more important? We have that too. That's all coming up. But first, is President Obama blindsiding Donald Trump? One longtime congressional Trump supporter is here to weigh in on that. Next.
Bring in the new year with the Fox News Channel. Kimberly Guilfoyle and Eric Bowling host live from the heart of New York. Our must-see coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern New Year's Eve, right here on Fox News Channel.
The White House has taken some major actions, and of course, not everyone is thrilled. Andy Card, a White House chief of staff under President George W. Bush, had this to say. Quote, I tend to believe that outgoing presidents should be as respectful of the burden of the incoming president as they can be, and not try to saddle the incoming president with obligations that weren't readily anticipated. And so I do feel there's a little blindsiding going on. Joining us now is Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy, a longtime Trump supporter. Good to see you, Congressman. We appreciate you coming in. What do you think about Barack Obama blindsiding Donald Trump on the way out the door?
Well, I think he is blindsiding Donald Trump. I mean, here you had this love affair going on when they first met after the election, and now that bromance is on Skid Row because you have Barack Obama, who's in essence going to the UN with the Israeli resolution. We have Arctic drilling. Now we have sanctions on Russia. We've had Obama come out and say that he would have won the election against Donald Trump. Mrs. Obama saying that now we're going to know what no hope feels like. So I think this has been a personal affront to Trump, and I think these two men are growing further apart. They have different views of the world. And if any of us think that Barack Obama on January 20th is going to ride off into the sunset like George Bush, it's not going to happen. He's not going to go away, and I think Donald Trump's going to have to deal with Mr. Obama for years to come, which I think is going to be a new era of how ex-presidents deal with current presidents.
Interesting point there, because Donald Trump is also going to have to deal with a lot of important players on the world stage, like Vladimir Putin as well. And so we've been talking about it this hour. This tweet earlier today where Donald Trump said, quote, great move on delay by Vladimir Putin. I always knew he was very smart, saying that he's going to delay responding to President Obama directly, a tit for tat on U.S. sanctions, and wait, maybe critics say, until he has a better hand and deals with Donald Trump, who's out there praising Vladimir Putin on social media.
Yeah, Ed, I got to tell you what, during the campaign, Twitter works really well, and Donald Trump was a master at driving his message through Twitter. But when you're dealing with foreign governments, it becomes far more challenging. What does Donald Trump really mean by the tweet? And it's hard for us, it's a head scratcher to go, what message is he trying to drive? What I'm taking away from this is Donald Trump is going to be unpredictable. In one breath, this week he's saying, great, smart move, Vlad. But last week, as Vladimir Putin was talking about modernizing his nuclear weapons, Donald Trump was like, and so are we. And if you want to get into a nuclear arms race, have at it. You did it 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You were destroyed. Try it again. So Trump is unpredictable, and I think that's going to be a new change-up in the way he deals with foreign leaders and also with the U.S. Congress.
Sure.
We just don't know where this guy's going to go.
Congressman, I have to press you because, yes, I get the positive side of that, and Donald Trump has made that case, that being unpredictable, then other world leaders, they don't know what you're going to do, and maybe they're a little scared of the U.S., more scared than they've been over the last 8 years, perhaps. On the other hand, some of your own fellow Republicans, Adam Kinzinger, one of them, was on Fox earlier today saying he's a little concerned about all this. Watch.
It's okay to say we want to re-engage the Russians and have talks. That's great. But it's another thing entirely to say, hey, they're really our friends. They're really the great protector. That's not the case at all. And I hope some of his words change. But I think he's going to be a fantastic president on a lot of fronts.
So it's important to be fair there. He's saying he'll be a fantastic president, but he's expressing concern that maybe he's being too nice to this Russian president.
So I think it's important to put this into context. I don't think Vladimir Putin is a good guy. I think he's a thug. I don't think Russia is an ally or a friend of the United States of America. They might help us as we both deal with radical Islamic terrorism, but we don't see eye to eye on a lot of issues. I think Mr. Trump is trying to navigate a fresh and new relationship with Putin. But if anyone around the world or in the United States thinks that they'll walk over Donald Trump, you just have to look at his business record. No one gets the better hand on Donald Trump in business, and no one got the upper hand on him in this presidential election. He's a savvy operator, and he'll play his cards effectively and usually comes out the winner. So I have all the faith that Donald Trump knows what he's going to do. He's not going to get pushed around like Barack Obama did from Vladimir Putin or other foreign leaders. He is going to be a tough, strong American leader, using American force and strength for good in the world, as opposed to this idea that Barack Obama had, where he's going to travel the world over and apologize for American power. I think that transition of Obama weakness to Trump's strength, I think, is going to be seen on day one, and it's going to be a positive for the kind of respect that the rest of the world has towards America. Look back, Ed, on playgrounds in America, strength is respected, weakness isn't. Obama's been weak. Donald Trump is going to be strong, and that will demand respect from Putin and China and ISIS and everyone else, I think.
Yeah, no doubt this is a much bigger playground and the world is watching. Congressman Sean Duffy, we appreciate you coming in, and Happy New Year.
You too.
You've seen Phil Keating all over Fox News, but did you know he can sing in Japanese? I didn't know that. He'll explain when he steps into the friend zone next. It's time now for the Friend Zone, where we invite one of our friends from within the building here at Fox, maybe even somewhere in beautiful Miami, onto the show. Tonight we're joined by correspondent Phil Keating, who you usually see near a beach somewhere with his hair softly blowing in the wind. And what a head of hair it is, Phil.
Thanks so much, Ed. You know, it's freezing here today. 63 degrees. Cold front came in.
That's cold for you.
Everybody's wearing their sweaters and scarves.
I was in Miami recently at the Wynwood Diner with my wife, Shirley, and you walked by. And we didn't know we were going to see each other. And you had cut your hair, because normally it's a bit longer. And so I didn't recognize you at first. And then I saw you. And I'm wondering, because now you're standing in front of a Benihana. So you're moving all around Miami. And I have no idea why you're in front of Benihana.
Well, I'm supposed to tell and share a fun, exciting, entertaining personal story that doesn't deal with my news career. And so I'm thinking, well, let's see. I'll go back to one of my favorite jobs. I had a lot of jobs in high school and college. Worked at Baskin-Robbins. I was a bag boy at a grocery store. Worked at a pizzeria. But my start in show business came at Benihana. I started as a dishwasher. And this is in St. Louis, where the restaurant's actually called Robata of Japan, owned by the owner's sister, so they changed the name for whatever reason. But everything's the same. The chef cooks at the table, 8 people sit around it, hibachi style. And so I was the dishwasher, then I would work my way up to busboy. And then in college, I had this sweet mullet. I think I'm going to have a photo.
Yeah, we just saw the photo.
Years.
It's pretty remarkable.
I'd go to the pool every day. Yeah, I'd go to the pool every day, bake, get a tan, go home, shower, go to work at 4 o'clock, party afterwards. It was the greatest job because, you know, when you're 18, 19 years old, you're just out really to have a good time.
And you learned how to sing in Japanese that way.
If you know what I'm saying.
Is that how you learned how to sing in Japanese?
Yeah, so I would do the birthday song at the table. In my tuxedo, I'd say, all right, we got a birthday. It's my shirt, so I had the whole table's attention, and we'd go like this. Ichi, ni, san, shi, go. Shiawase na ateo tatako, shiawase na ateo tatako, shiawase na atai dorashimi soyo, sorimi na ateo tatako. And we'd take a photograph, Polaroid.
I love it. You know what? I was going to ask you to sing,
times.
and you're so good that you just seamlessly went in there. I've got 15 seconds. You're always a big part of the New Year's Eve coverage as well, and it'll be the same tomorrow night, right?
Yeah. It will be a lot of fun. We'll be at the W Hotel South Beach. German DJ who's had a couple of #1 hits, Robin Schultz, is spinning out poolside. And hopefully no crazy moments like we had a couple of years ago when I was interviewing some young ladies live about their New Year's resolution. And they said, we're going to blank stuff up in much different words than that.
Oh, boy.
Live on television. It was quite the viral moment.
Phil.
But it should be fun. A lot of pretty people.
You're always professional, never shaken up by that. We appreciate you coming on and your singing voice. That was awesome. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Sayonara.
Coming up, millions of people will head to Times Square tomorrow. Just a block away from here. Will they have to brave the cold? And what is being done to keep them safe? Nearly 30 hours from right now, the ball will drop in New York's Times Square, and 2017 will be here. We've got live team coverage from Times Square, plus your forecast if you're planning on hitting the streets tomorrow night. Let's begin with Brian Yennis live in Times Square. Good to see you, Brian.
Hey, good to see you, Ed. You know, in pretty much this time tomorrow night, some 2 million people from all over the world will be standing here in Times Square to watch the ever-exciting 60-second ball drop and welcoming 2017. And these perfect strangers will be standing side by side, braving the cold, no toilets, no alcohol, to be a part of history. And of course, security will be tight. The NYPD really employing for the first time ever sanitation trucks to protect this event. Some 65 trucks will be put in place around Times Square. They weigh about 20 tons each. They'll be packed with some 15 tons of sand. They're meant to be unmovable to protect this area from possible vehicular terror attacks like we saw in Nice, France over the summer, and in Berlin, Germany just less than 2 weeks ago that killed some 12 people. Now, the NYPD says they've used these trucks before, but never at New York at the New Year's Eve big event. Also, some 100 police patrol cars will be put in place to block intersections. Some 7,000 police in plain clothes and uniform will be here as well. Some radio detection equipment, boat patrols, helicopters, bomb-sniffing dogs, you name it. The NYPD says there's no real specific credible threat here, but they also say that this will be one among the safest places in the world tomorrow night. Should be a fun time here in Times Square. Ed?
Fun indeed, Brian. Thank you and Happy New Year. Fox News chief meteorologist Rick Reichmuth is tracking all your New Year's weather. Rick and I sometimes get to spend a little time on Fox and Friends weekend. I'm sleeping in tomorrow, but I hear you're going to actually be right there at the ball in Times Square giving a preview on Fox and Friends.
That's true. Well, if anybody needs a break on a Saturday morning tomorrow, it's you after how much you've worked. But I will be up in the morning at that ball on the top of the building right there in Times Square all morning on Fox and Friends. So tune in. You get all kinds of history on the ball and more about what's coming up in Times Square tomorrow. Tomorrow night at midnight, 42 degrees, not bad at all. That's above our average daytime high. So things across the Northeast looking good. Very good news after the big storm that moved through and brought all of that snow across Maine. Still people without power. Now behind that, we have the lake effect snow that's going on. And then a storm brewing out across parts of the South. One here in Southern California. That's going to be with us still tomorrow. And then this moisture you see there across parts of Texas. That is what we're going to watch kind of really building and bring a lot of rain here across parts of the Southeast, including tomorrow night at the time that the ball drops. I think Atlanta, you're going to be washed out for all of the activities that go on there where the peach drops. The East Coast, you're looking good. But the other big story is going to be the Central Plains are good, but Seattle probably getting in on some snow tomorrow night into Sunday. That does not happen very often, but a big storm moving in there. If you are maybe on Sunday just on the couch nursing a hangover or something, not looking that bad anywhere in the country. The cold air returns to everybody this week, though, starting in the Pacific Northwest Monday into Tuesday.
Rick, Happy New Year, and
you.
good luck with that alarm clock in the morning.
Yeah, thank you.
That's about it for us tonight. Tune in each night, 7 p.m. Eastern, to the show that is a sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. I've almost memorized that. And don't miss the Fox All-American New Year. Our live coverage from Times Square tomorrow starts 8 p.m. Eastern. The O'Reilly Factor up next. Thanks to Tucker and his whole team for making me feel welcome. Mr. Carlson is back Monday. Good night and Happy New Year.